Death. I felt it in the hush of the hallway like a pale specter hovering at the edge of my vision. My lungs drew in air, and for the first time in years I realized I could hear my own breathing, ragged, caught halfway between a sigh and a suppressed cry. Each inhale felt like dragging broken glass into my chest. Each exhale was release, yet never quite enough. There I was, heart pounding, mind churning. And I kept thinking, this is how it ends. Not with a bang, not with a shout, but with a slow, suffocating knowledge that something inside me had died before my body could catch up. I closed my eyes against the hallway light, that harsh overhead glare turning everything sterile and cold. My name is Alex. I'm 42, a financial consultant by trade, a husband by choice, a father by assumption, until the day everything shattered. My breathing echoed in my head, and I gripped the edge of the desk, a cheap wooden thing with coffee rings on its surface. I stared at the open laptop. The screen glowed back at me, mocking, the cursor blinking in an empty email reply. My wife had left the bedroom door open, and I could hear the faint hum of her hairdryer from down the hall. She had no idea. I used to think betrayal would come with flashing lights or a dramatic confrontation, furious accusations, tears, perhaps even a thrown vase. But all I got was an email. A single, accidental email that drifted into my inbox because she, or rather he, forgot to check the recipient field. It looked innocent enough at first, just a short paragraph. My eyes skimmed across the standard words about meeting up, about something to do with yoga practice. Nothing truly suspicious. Then, near the bottom, a single paragraph, 4 words standing alone, like a heartless sentence. You were wild on the couch. That was all. 4 words. But each of those words hammered me in the chest like a fist. You were wild on the couch. It was so casual, so intimate, so deeply sexual. I forced myself to read it again, once, twice, as if I'd misread. But each time it was the same. I heard myself breathing faster now, shallow. My heart hammered. My thoughts spiraled through 1,000 questions, asterisk, asterisk, when did this happen? Why? How could she, asterisk, asterisk, and yet I was too terrified to voice them. Confrontation felt like stepping off a cliff. My mind waged war with itself, maybe it's a misunderstanding. But that forward paragraph slashed through any illusions, that was pure, raw desire, typed out in black text, addressed to her. This was no polite conversation. No ambiguous, flirty remark. This was an explosion of lust, spelled out so simply. My eyes drifted toward the hallway mirror. I'd left the door open just a crack, enough to see my reflection, short russet hair, a lean face, green eyes that once radiated confidence but now seemed hollow. I hardly recognized the man staring back. Even so, I forced my voice down to a whisper, urging calm, urging logic, don't do something stupid. Don't confront her now, asterisk, asterisk, so I sat in the half-dark, letting my breath slow. My heart still thundered, but my face turned to glass. Expressionless, cold, like I was wearing a mask. I'd learned the trick years ago in my line of work. Keep calm, keep the client or the adversary guessing. Let them see nothing. Even if inside you're screaming. She called out from the bedroom, Alex, did you see my phone charger? Her words were drowned by the drone of the hairdryer. I swallowed, tasting bitterness on my tongue. For a second I couldn't speak. Finally I managed to check the dresser. My voice came out even, steadier than I felt. She mumbled something and I heard the hairdryer click off. I minimized the email window. Then I opened it again, couldn't help it, and read that line one last time. My hands trembled with the urge to smash the screen, to fling the laptop against the wall, to storm into the bedroom, grab her by the arms, and demand, who the hell is he? But I didn't. The hairdryer started again, a mechanical whir that reminded me of a dentist's drill. It was fitting, something was being drilled out of me, my pride, maybe. My illusions about us. Alex, she called again, have you found it? I closed the laptop. Not yet, I said, my voice forced into that neutral lull. The dryness in my mouth tasted like ash. I heard her footsteps approach, light and purposeful, each step a small tap on the hardwood floor. I turned to see her in the doorway, hair half-dried, wearing a soft robe. Mish, short for Mish, though officially she was Michelle. A graceful woman, a few years younger than me. Curves in just the right places, the slightest tilt of her hips that once set my blood racing. That body used to bring me comfort. Now all I could see was the shape of her shoulders, the line of her neck, and wonder whose hands had touched it when I wasn't looking. Hey, she said, her tone playful. She leaned against the doorframe and gave me a little smile. You okay? I realized my face must have shown something, some flicker of tension. I forced a laugh, short and hollow. Yeah, I said. Just checking emails. I hated how normal I sounded. Like I was reciting lines from a script. She smiled a little wider, but her eyes roamed my face, searching for clues. You sure? She had this habit of cocking her head, letting her hair swing over one shoulder, looking at me in that mothering way. It used to make me feel cared for. Now I felt cornered. I nodded, gave the laptop screen a quick glance, and forced my mouth into a neutral grin. Then I turned away, ignoring the swirl of anxiety in my gut. She shrugged. All right. Let me know if you see my charger. I think I left it plugged in behind the nightstand. Then she disappeared down the hall. I stayed there, seated on that stiff wooden chair, until the morning sun rose high enough to pierce the blinds. By the time I finally moved, my coffee had gone cold and my arms felt numb. My mind was set. I wouldn't say a word yet. There's a certain type of pain that can only be endured in silence because to speak it out loud would break you. Over the following days, I pretended. That was the hardest part, the pretense. We'd eat dinner, watch TV on the couch, talk about our schedules. Meanwhile, inside my head, I was dissecting every gesture, every smile. I was replaying those 4 damning words. I'd see her phone flash at odd times. I'd notice her smoothing her hair, her lips parted as if reading some text that made her heart flutter. And I'd keep my face to glass. One night, about a week after I discovered the email, she was out running an errand. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, scanning through her phone records. I didn't have to do anything illegal. We shared some bills, so the itemized calls were right there. His number popped up repeatedly at strange hours. 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 6:30 a.m. My stomach churned. My fists clenched, knuckles whitening. Yet I felt no impetus to call him or call her out. Because something darker was brewing in me, quiet fury, so compressed it felt almost cold. I wanted every piece of the puzzle before I made a move. The next day, I found out about the couch. As if reading those words in an email weren't enough, I walked in on something no man wants to see, though, ironically, it wasn't as dramatic as one might imagine. She thought I'd be gone to meet a client until late. When I stepped into the living room, the blinds half drawn, I heard a soft moan. A groan. My heart thundered, but my footsteps were silent on the carpet. I crept toward the edge of the hallway, peeking around the corner. And there they were. He was taller than me, lean, wearing just a pair of yoga pants, yoga patu, I would later mock him in my mind. Brownish blonde hair in a messy knot at the back of his head, a surfer's tan across his arms. He was kneeling on our couch, that same couch where I'd massaged her back so many times. She was lying on her side, robe fallen open, naked skin gleaming in the lamplight. His hands skated up her thigh. I couldn't hear what he whispered, but she let out this breathy laugh. I recognized that laugh once it had been for me. A faint buzzing filled my ears. My hands began to shake. I expected to explode, to shout, to charge in. But no. I just stood there, heart pounding. Cold. So cold. I was in a numb, surreal state as though my own body refused to let me act. The hush of my breathing drowned out everything. Then I heard her voice, low and sultry, do that thing again, that move, yes, there. I saw him shift. He gripped her hips, pressed himself to her. A stifled moan escaped her lips. She twisted her head, eyes clenched shut as if in ecstasy. My gut twisted like a blade had been shoved between my ribs. How can she? But I shut that question down. She'd made her choice. Now I was making mine. My mind flicked to that accidental email, "You were wild on the couch." They were reenacting it, continuing it. The ultimate betrayal happening right there, in broad daylight, on the piece of furniture we'd shared for quiet nights. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Instead of confronting them, I backed away. I walked out the front door as silently as I came, then closed it behind me. I can't say how long I stood on the front step, breathing in and out, fighting the urge to vomit. Eventually, I got into my car and drove aimlessly for hours with no memory of the route. That night, I came home late. She was in the kitchen, wearing a casual sweater, hair damp from a shower. She glanced up wide-eyed. "Alex, you're home so late." Her voice pitched high, guilty. Then she added, more softly, I wanted to tell you something. But you seemed busy. So I brushed past her, heading to the sink. "I'm fine," I said curtly. I poured myself a glass of water, sipped. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. She hovered behind me, uncertain. In the reflection of the window, I saw her parted lips, the tension in her brow. She parted them again as if to speak. But I turned around, gave her a reassuring nod, even forced the corners of my mouth up. "We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" My voice sounded dead to my own ears. She waited a moment, then nodded, biting her lip. "Okay. Good night, honey." I didn't reply. I went to the basement that night, ***, the Podval ***, as some might call it, though it was just a dusty, unfinished lower floor. I curled up on a spare mattress and stared at the ceiling beams. Images of them on the couch throbbed in my mind. The memory of her throaty moan threatened to tear me apart. But I didn't cry, didn't even let out a sob. My anger and pain were pinned beneath a layer of ice. The next morning at dawn, I ordered a DNA test kit online. The boy I'd raised for 5 years, my son. My mind seethed at the possibility, if she'd had an affair now, what if it had happened before? He had my last name, but did he really share my blood? I felt sick with guilt for even thinking it, but I had to know. The kit arrived in a few days. I swabbed, sealed, and sent it off. In those 2 weeks of waiting, I drifted through each day like a sleepwalker. Sometimes I'd sleep in the basement. Sometimes I'd slide into bed beside her after she was already asleep, not wanting to talk, not wanting to be near the perfumed skin I now imagined tainted by another man's hands. She noticed, of course. She'd ask me, "Alex, is everything okay?" Or, "You're acting strange, baby." I just shook my head, mumbled about stress at work. She tried to initiate intimacy once or twice, even set the mood with candles. I stuttered a refusal, claiming exhaustion. Inside, I was coiled like a spring. My mind roared with questions I couldn't bring myself to ask. My chest ached. My fists twitched. Yet I maintained a veneer of calm. I see that now as the darkest time of my life, those 2 weeks of silent dread waiting for a lab result that might demolish the last piece of me. Then the day arrived. I remember it well, a dull Thursday morning, a slight drizzle tapping the windows. I got the email with the test results. My throat was tight as I clicked the link. The result might as well have been a bullet to the heart. My name was nowhere in the paternal line. Our son wasn't mine. The probability of paternity read 0%. 0. I had no part in him. The child I'd taught to ride a bike, whose tears I'd wiped away when he scraped his knee, he was the living proof of her betrayal from years ago. I sat at my desk for a long time, breathing as quietly as I could. My heart hammered so loud I thought I'd pass out. Then my phone buzzed. A text from her, "Do you want me to pick up groceries or will you? Also, we need more milk." My vision blurred. I typed back, "I'll handle it." That's all. No emoticons, no punctuation. I wanted to break something. I wanted to break everything. But a quiet voice in my head told me, not yet. Wait, ***, so I bided my time. Mowed the lawn. Paid the bills. Even tucked in my son, at night with a forced, hollow smile, trying to keep the tears from flooding my eyes. He had no fault in this. He was innocent, a child. It wasn't his deception. It was hers. Days slipped by. I began to see this other man's face everywhere, some phantom I was itching to confront. Yet I didn't. Part of me needed more than a brawl. I needed a reckoning. But not in the old-fashioned way, ***, not ***, the police, not fists swinging in a bar. I remembered a handful of people from my past, men who had once spoken ill of me, or who'd cheated me, or who'd simply underestimated me, and how I'd made them pay by orchestrating financial ruin. I was good with numbers, with silent sabotage. But this time it wasn't just about sabotage. My wife's lover apparently had a background of scamming. I'd gleaned that from whispered phone calls or from the hints in her texts that I'd read surreptitiously. Some investment opportunity, a debt club he'd run away from. A few scorned partners from his yoga side hustle. A bad investor he'd burned. He'd crossed multiple people. So instead of attacking him outright, I found a different way. I tracked down those he had wronged, phone calls, discreet inquiries. I mentioned that I knew where he was. I said I might have leads on how to find him if they were still interested in discussing unresolved matters. It was a quiet, methodical plan. Each day I'd contact someone new. I made sure they had the address, the details, gave them the fuel they needed to want revenge or demand repayment. Then I stepped back and let nature take its course. Meanwhile, I told my wife nothing. She noticed my coldness, yes. She tried to corner me at one point, raising her voice, "Alex, talk to me. Stop the silent treatment." I just stared at her, eyes empty, and said, "Your gratitude isn't needed." That was the only reference to that old email that slipped out. She paled as if understanding something had changed beyond repair. But I walked away. I refused to speak more. I sensed her panic building, saw her phone calls intensify. Probably to him. But it was too late. The wheels were set in motion. One evening I let her coax me into bed, though I insisted on no intimacy. I claimed I'd pulled a muscle at the gym. She tried to massage me, but I jerked away. She ended up falling asleep in confusion while I lay there, wide-eyed, thoughts spinning. My mind was alive with fantasies of how it would go down, how those old debts would catch up with him. Then I remembered my father once telling me, "Revenge is a poison, son. Make sure you can handle the taste." I let the memory pass. My father had no idea what betrayal felt like, not like this. 3 days later, it happened. I don't know the full details, but from scraps of rumor and a phone call from one of the men in that debt club, I gathered that my wife's lover was cornered in some yoga studio downtown. They confronted him without fuss, without drama, no gloating, no screaming, said the man on the phone, his voice a calm monotone. We got creative. I didn't ask what creative meant. I just listened, stone-faced, as he explained how they considered the matter settled. Then he hung up. It was nearly midnight when my wife got the news. She came stumbling into the living room, tears streaking her cheeks. She'd received a cryptic text from his phone, telling her we're done. She tried to call back, but no one answered. She looked at me desperately, eyes puffy and red. Alex, she stammered, I need your help. I think something happened to Ray. I nodded once, slowly. I'm sure he'll be fine, I murmured, voice devoid of emotion. She sank onto the couch. The same couch. Her nails dug into the cushions as if searching for comfort. She stared at me, waiting for me to ask questions or show concern. But I just stared back, silent. She parted her lips, wanting me to hold her, to console her. I offered nothing. My face was glass, my heart an iceberg. The next morning, she got a call from a friend who heard rumors that he'd left town or possibly was hospitalized. Conflicting stories said he'd run off or been forced out. She paced the house, panic saturating every breath. But I had already glimpsed the truth in that phone call from the debt club. They must have had their own brand of justice, and it was served cold. One might call it karma. I called it freedom. Then she left. 1 week later, I found a note on the kitchen table saying she couldn't live with the tension in our house, that she was going to start fresh. She left with the boy, my son. Or rather, her son. Ray's son, biologically. I didn't argue. I didn't chase her. I let her go. I dropped everything except the bare essentials and moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. I finalized the divorce in absentia, no fights, no demands. My wife, ex-wife, I suppose, quickly found a new life in Los Angeles or deeper in that sprawl, focusing on her design clients. Sometimes I saw pictures of her online, radiant smile, fancy sunglasses, the warm flush of a California sunset behind her. She gave some story to mutual friends about irreconcilable differences, how we parted amicably. People told me she seemed lighter, living in the glow of a new city. But I recognized that look in her photos, the forced brightness in her eyes. The deep shadows behind them. I recognized emptiness when I saw it. She was no longer the same person who once laughed in my arms. And deep down, she knew I had something to do with what happened to her lover, with how swiftly and mercilessly they found him and made him pay. I never confessed. She never asked. They say revenge solves nothing. People want to moralize that it only extends the cycle of pain. Maybe that's true. But sometimes it's not about justice or fairness. Sometimes it's about letting the anger burn itself out. Getting rid of the burden that's been driving you insane. Mest is not retribution, it's liberation. I started focusing on my own life again, forging new routines, early morning runs, consulting clients, building new professional contacts. The old me would have tried to numb the pain with a fling or a bottle. Instead, I found a quiet satisfaction in order, in the predictable routine of work. I said nothing to anyone about my personal drama. The only person who might have known the details was my younger brother, but I never told him. If he guessed, he never pressed me. Then came the day I saw that photo, a social media post of her near the Hollywood Hills, leaning on a balcony railing with a designer coffee cup in hand. The sun was setting behind her, casting everything in gold. She was smiling big, her hair done up in a neat, stylish arrangement. But her eyes? Empty. Dead. I recognized that difference because once I'd seen those eyes sparkle with real warmth. Now they were just hollow windows. I stared at that image longer than I cared to admit. Then I turned off my phone. I realized I felt almost nothing. No sorrow, no bitterness. Just a faint stirring of pity. Because I knew that behind that posed grin, she was living with the knowledge that her decisions destroyed us both. And behind that new life, she was haunted by what happened to the man she'd called her lover. She had no proof, nobody could trace it to me. But she must have suspected. And that suspicion, eating at her day and night, was part of her penance. Sometimes on lonely nights, I lie in bed and recall how I used to rub her feet after a long day, how she'd let out a soft, satisfied hum. I remember the times we shared, the small joys and whispered promises. I remember how she used to smell after a shower, fresh and warm, with a hint of lavender body lotion. It's astonishing how quickly such a life can turn to dust with just 4 words in an email. I still feel a pinch of sorrow for the boy. He was innocent in it all, but I was never truly his father. She'd robbed both of us of that honesty. I don't plan to see them again. She tries to reach out occasionally, or so I've heard from mutual acquaintances, but I never respond. What's left to say? There's no rebuilding that trust. My silence is my final gift to her, maybe even the cruelest cut of all. In a sense, it's a reflection of what she gave me, unanswered questions and echoing emptiness. People sometimes ask me why I didn't lash out physically or why I didn't drag the entire mess to court. If they only knew the emptiness I carried, they'd understand that some pains are too deep to scream about. I chose not to make a public spectacle of it. My method was surgical, targeted. I remember how it felt to send that last message to the debt club, giving them the details they needed. It was as if a weight lifted from my chest. The rest was them, not me. I just gave them the door, they opened it. Everyone wants closure, but closure is rarely gentle. It's been over a year now. Sometimes as I watch the sun set behind the city from my apartment balcony, I think about the man I used to be kind, trusting, with a gentle smile. He died the moment I saw that email. I wonder if I'll ever mourn him properly. Then I close my eyes, let out a long breath, and accept that who I am now, harsher, colder, but more certain of my boundaries, is the man I'll be for the rest of my days. I told no one about the DNA test. That knowledge belongs to me alone. The son I taught to talk, the child I believed was my flesh and blood for 5 years, was never mine. I imagine in the future the boy might grow up and learn the truth. He might even come searching for me, wanting some explanation. Maybe by then I'll have found kinder words. Maybe I'll be able to say something that helps him see it wasn't his fault. But I doubt it'll change how I feel about his mother. Some betrayals cut too deep. People talk about forgiveness like it's a virtue that sets you free. Perhaps it does. But I discovered that withholding forgiveness also sets you free in a different way, free from illusions, free from the burden of believing everything must be mended. We live in a world where not every wound heals. Not every scar is invisible. Sometimes the best we can do is accept the damage and move forward. I remember the day I silently ended any hope of reconciliation. She was in the bathroom, the door open, rummaging through the medicine cabinet for her face cream. I quietly set a pillow and blanket at the top of the basement stairs. She turned and said, "What's that for?" I replied calmly, "I'm sleeping downstairs." Her eyes flickered with alarm. She whispered, "Why?" My answer? The same words I'd said before, "Your gratitude isn't needed." I walked down the steps and closed the door behind me. That was our last real conversation under the same roof. In the final weeks before she left, she acted as if we were strangers who shared a space, haunted by a tension so thick we could hardly breathe. She tried to talk in small bursts, apologizing for small misunderstandings, but never addressing the real issue. Sometimes I caught her looking at me, tears brimming, and I'd hold my silence. I guess she realized I knew, but that I wouldn't speak about it. Eventually, she gave up. Then she was gone. Now, late at night, I can hear my breathing again, like at the start. But it doesn't feel so frantic. It's measured, controlled, a slow in and out that reminds me I'm still alive. I've discovered a certain peace in solitude, in the knowledge that I did what I had to do. Yes, there's a darkness in me now, a part that acknowledges I set a brutal chain of events in motion. Yet I feel no remorse for him. My only regret is that I wasted so many years of my life trusting someone who didn't deserve it. And so here I am, telling the story in my own words, forging it into shape so I can lay it to rest. Perhaps, if another man out there, pushing 50 or 60, finds himself seeing those same signs of betrayal, he'll remember these words. Sometimes, silence is the only weapon you need. Speak too soon and you might be devoured by your own anger. Wait, watch, then act with precision. Let those who wronged you face their own reckoning. If you ask me, was I wrong to orchestrate what happened to him? Maybe. But betrayal changes you. It claws at your sanity, devours the part of you that wants to be the bigger man. I never claimed to be perfect. I just claimed to be done with lies. Now, I live with fewer illusions. I live with fewer regrets. He was wild on the couch, yes, but now, as far as I'm concerned, he's wild nowhere. Maybe he's in another state, running from his debt, or stuck in some hospital with broken bones. Or maybe he's just a ghost drifting around those LA streets. I don't know and don't care. She's gone. She left. She's free in her own mind, building a new life under the California sun. But every time she snaps another photo of herself smiling, there's that emptiness behind her eyes. The spark is gone. I see it plain as day. Because the difference between real joy and forced happiness is stark. It's the difference between living flesh and a plastic doll. That's my closure. That's my revenge. And this emptiness we share, it's what remains between us, even if we never speak again. Maybe one day she'll find a new man or move on in ways I can't imagine. But she'll always remember that single moment when she realized I wasn't going to fight, wasn't going to shout, wasn't going to call the cops or file lawsuits. I was just going to let her watch everything crumble around the man she chose instead of me. I see the curiosity in some folks' eyes, asterisk, asterisk. Did you ever consider forgiving her? Asterisk, asterisk, letting it go, raising the boy as your own, moving past the betrayal? Once upon a time, maybe. But that was before I witnessed their coupling on the couch, before I read those 4 words so brazenly typed, a line of text that might as well have been an epitaph for our marriage. I can't unsee that. And I can't unfeel the betrayal. If you're waiting for me to say I found new love or discovered some grand moral lesson, you'll wait forever. Life isn't always that neat. We don't always transform heartbreak into redemption. Sometimes heartbreak just leads to a harder heart. And you learn to live with it. Late at night, I still hear my breathing. Steady, measured. A man who survived a personal war, battered but standing. No trophies, no triumph. Just a sense that the worst is behind me and whatever remains is mine alone to shape. If that's not redemption, maybe it's at least acceptance. I can still taste the moment I found that email, the metallic surge of adrenaline on my tongue. I can still see them on the couch, in my living room, pressed against each other in a posture so intimate I felt gutted. The memory doesn't fade, but it no longer stabs me in the gut. It's like a scar, ugly, permanent, but no longer bleeding. She's in Los Angeles now, presumably. Ray is gone. The boy is somewhere else, carrying a last name that isn't truly his. And me? I remain here, in a modest apartment, continuing my routine. Each breath is a small reminder that I survived. I own my mistakes and my vengeance. I expect no absolution. Death. That was how this all started in a way, the death of my trust, the death of who I was. But ironically, I'm still here. I keep breathing in and out. That's the punchline life handed me. You die inside, but your body goes on living, forcing you to find new reasons to wake up each morning. I have my work, my moderate success, my comfortable rhythms. Sometimes I help clients make prudent investments, watch them flourish, and I think, good for them. Let them enjoy the naive satisfaction I once had. Maybe they'll never taste betrayal the way I did. Or maybe they will, and they'll break in ways I can't predict. The older I get, the more I realize we're all just spinning in uncertain circles. Yet, if I close my eyes and listen carefully, I can still hear my own breathing. It's the one constant in all this chaos. A reminder that I remain, that I endured, that I have more chapters to write in my story, even if no one else is reading. It's a slow, rasping breath, sometimes tinged with regret, sometimes laced with grim satisfaction. And that, more than anything, tells me I'm alive and free in the quiet way that suits me now. End of it. That's where I stand. Don't expect me to say any more. My vengeance is done. My illusions are gone. What's left is a man, shaped by betrayal, forging his own path forward. Some might call it tragic. I call it necessary. Because once you've heard your own breathing in the silence, once you've tasted that slow burn of rage in your throat, you can never go back to who you used to be. You can only keep walking, step by step, to whatever end awaits. And so I do.